Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin. The morning sun cut through the kitchen window like a blade, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air. Brandon Miranda sat at the breakfast table, watching his 8-year-old daughter Missy meticulously arrange her cereal into color-coded sections. She had his dark eyes and her mother's delicate features, but the methodical precision was all his. "Dad, Mrs. Henderson says we're doing fractions today," Missy announced, not looking up from her bowl. "I already know fractions. Can you teach me decimals instead?" Brandon smiled, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. "Finish your breakfast, sweetheart. I'll teach you this weekend. Promise, promise." Samantha Miranda descended the stairs, her phone already pressed to her ear. She'd been a knockout when they'd met 12 years ago at a bureau fundraiser. Long dark hair, sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Now those same eyes barely registered his presence as she gestured impatiently at her watch. "Missy, we're leaving in 5 minutes," she said, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "Clint's people are handling the merger today, and I need to be there." Brandon's jaw tightened at the name. Clint Newell, his brother-in-law. The golden child of the Newell family empire who'd turned their legitimate construction business into something else entirely over the past decade. Something darker. "I can take her to school," Brandon offered. "You have that interview at Garrison Security," Samantha said, still not meeting his eyes. "Don't screw it up. We need the money." 3 years. 3 years since he'd resigned from the FBI hostage rescue team, and Samantha still threw it in his face like a weapon. She'd never understood why he'd walked away from the career that had defined him for 12 years. How could she? She'd never held a dying child in her arms because the tactical decision came 3 minutes too late. Never watched the light leave a hostage's eyes while their family waited outside, praying for miracles that didn't come. The Wilmot Elementary situation had broken something inside him that couldn't be fixed. 7 children. 7 small bodies. The news had called him a hero for saving 17 others. He called himself a failure for the 7 who hadn't made it. "Right," Brandon said quietly. "The interview." Missy looked up at him with those knowing eyes that saw too much. "You don't want that job, do you?" Missy, finish eating, Samantha snapped, then returned to her phone conversation. "Yes, Clint. I know. The zoning permits came through." "Of course they did. Dad made sure of it." Brandon stood and kissed the top of Missy's head. "Be good today, kiddo. I'll pick you up after school. Mom's picking me up. She told me this morning." He glanced at Samantha, who waved a dismissive hand. "My mother wants to see her." "It's been weeks, Brandon." What she meant was, your presence isn't welcome at the Newell estate. What she meant was, they blame you for not being successful enough, ambitious enough, connected enough. For being the nobody who'd somehow tricked their daughter into marriage during a moment of rebellion. Brandon grabbed his keys and headed for the door. The interview at Garrison Security was at 10. It was a job he didn't want, working for a company that specialized in corporate espionage masquerading as risk assessment. But Samantha was right about one thing: they needed money. His consulting work wasn't cutting it, and her family had made it clear that no financial help would come as long as he remained in the picture. The interview went exactly as expected. The hiring manager, a former Secret Service washout named Carl Jennings, spent 40 minutes trying to impress him with stories that Brandon could spot as embellishments from a mile away. When Jennings finally asked about his FBI experience, Brandon gave him the sanitized version. The version that didn't include the screams, the blood, the impossible choices. "We could use someone with your tactical background," Jennings said, leaning back in his chair with false casualness. "Corporate security is the future, Miranda. Government work is noble, but it doesn't pay the bills." "I'll think about it," Brandon lied. He was pulling into his driveway at 2:15 when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but years of training had him recognizing patterns. The call came exactly when Missy's school day would be ending. "Brandon Miranda," he answered, heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice he'd learned to hate over 7 years of family dinners and forced pleasantries. "Hey there, brother-in-law." Clint Newell's voice dripped with manufactured charm. "We need to talk about your daughter." Brandon's entire body went cold. "Where's Missy?" "Safe. For now." A pause, theatrical and deliberate. "See, you've got a problem, Brandon. You've been making my sister miserable for years, making my family look bad. We've been patient, but patience has limits. If you've touched her, you'll what? Clint laughed. Call the FBI? You don't work for them anymore. Call the police? Brandon, my family owns this town. The mayor, the police chief, half the city council, they all owe us. You really think some washed-up Fed is going to waltz in and... Brandon hung up. His hands weren't shaking. The old training kicked in automatically. Assess, analyze, act. Emotion was the enemy. Panic got hostages killed. He dialed Samantha. She answered on the third ring. Brandon, I'm in a meeting. Where's Missy? A pause. What? Your brother just called me. Where's our daughter? He heard her sharp intake of breath, followed by muffled conversation. Hold on. Let me call the school. Brandon was already moving, pulling up the tracking app on his phone. 6 months ago, after a close call, when Missy had wandered off in a grocery store, he'd sewn a small GPS tracker into her favorite backpack. Samantha had called it paranoid. He'd called it prepared. The tracker showed movement, heading east on Route 47, toward the industrial district on the edge of town. Samantha called back. The school says I picked her up at 2 o'clock. Brandon, what's happening? What did Clint do? Someone impersonating you took Missy from school. His voice was calm, professional. The voice that had talked down armed suspects and negotiated with terrorists. I'm handling it. We should call the police. Your brother just told me he owns the police. Was he lying? Silence. Samantha, was he lying? No, she whispered. God, Brandon, what has he become? I need you to listen carefully. Go to your parents' house. Ask them if they knew about this. If they did. He paused, the implications crystallizing. If they did, then this isn't just about Clint. This is the whole family. My parents wouldn't. Ask them. And Samantha, when this is over, you and I need to have a very different conversation about your brother's legitimate business. He ended the call and pulled up a different contact. Russell Birch, his former second-in-command on the HRT. The man who'd stood beside him in 14 hostage situations and never flinched. Russell answered immediately. Boss, that you? I need the team. All of them. And I need them now. What's the situation? My daughter's been taken. I'm sending you coordinates. How fast can you get here? Give me 4 hours. Who's the target? Brandon stared at the GPS tracker, watching it stop at an abandoned warehouse complex that had once belonged to Newell Construction. Local criminal organization. Well-funded. Well-connected. Approximately 25 to 30 armed personnel based on preliminary intelligence. Jesus, Brandon. That's a war. That's Tuesday. You in? Russell didn't hesitate. I'll make the calls. Willard's in Houston, Kellogg's in Denver, but they'll move. What's the rules of engagement? Brandon thought about Missy's face that morning, the way she'd promised to be good, the way she'd known, somehow, that something was wrong. Scorched earth, he said quietly. No prisoners. No mercy. We're going off books on this one, Russ. Anyone who says no, I understand. Nobody's saying no, boss. We're coming. The GPS tracker led Brandon to an industrial park on the eastern outskirts of town, a sprawling complex of warehouses and fabrication plants that had been Newell Construction's primary hub before old Marcus Newell had died and left the empire to his children. The legitimate business had moved to newer facilities. What remained here was something else entirely. Brandon parked 3 blocks away and moved on foot, his mind automatically cataloging details. Security cameras on the corners, older models, probably recording to local servers. 2 guard stations at the main entrance, both manned. A chain-link fence that wouldn't stop a determined 5-year-old, let alone a trained operator. His phone buzzed. Samantha, my parents swear they didn't know, she said, her voice thick with tears. But Brandon, my mother hesitated. She hesitated before answering. That's answer enough. What are you going to do? Get our daughter back. And then we burn it all down. He ended the call and settled into a surveillance position behind a rusted dumpster. The tracker showed Missy's location in the largest warehouse, the one with reinforced doors and blacked-out windows. Smart. Clint had chosen a fortress. Too bad fortresses only worked if you were defending against conventional assault. Brandon's phone rang again. Russell, we're wheels up in 30 minutes, Russell said. Willard's bringing the toys. You remember that little bird we borrowed in Kandahar? You still have access to that. Let's just say some contracts never really expire. Kellogg's working flight plan now. We'll come in low, use the terrain to mask approach. What's the target profile? Single large structure, approximately 50,000 square feet. Multiple entry points, but probably only 2 that aren't welded shut. Hostage is being held in the southeast quadrant based on tracker data. Unknown number of hostiles, but assume all armed and dangerous. Copy that. Intel package. Brandon pulled up files on his phone. Information he'd been quietly compiling for 3 years as he'd watched Clint Newell transform from an arrogant trust fund kid into something darker. Sending now. Primary target is Clint Newell, 6'2", 200 pounds, former college wrestler with delusions of being a crime lord. Secondary targets are his crew, ex-cons, gang affiliates, corrupt cops on his payroll. Corrupt cops. Fantastic. It gets better. His family practically owns the local government. We're on our own for this one. Just like old times, Russell said, and Brandon could hear the grim smile in his voice. We're coming in hot, boss. For hours. Try not to start the party without us. Brandon disconnected and focused on a warehouse. Movement near the north entrance. 2 men in tactical gear that screamed mall ninja, all flash and no substance. They were smoking, weapons slung carelessly. Unprofessional. Undisciplined. Good. His phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a photo of Missy sitting in a metal chair, her eyes wide with fear, but no visible injuries. Below it, a message. Your wife signed papers giving me legal guardianship. Judge approved it an hour ago. She's mine now. You'll never see her again unless you walk away. Leave town. Leave Samantha. Disappear. You have 24 hours. Brandon stared at the message, then at the photo. Missy was wearing her purple jacket, the one with the unicorn patch she'd insisted on sewing herself. In the background, he could see part of a logo on the wall. Newell Construction, faded but visible. He texted back, "You made a mistake." The response came immediately. "What mistake? I own this town. I own the law. What are you going to do about it?" Brandon smiled, cold and precise. "I'm going to show you the difference between owning something and earning it." Another photo came through. This time, Clint himself was in frame, holding a gun casually while standing behind Missy's chair. He was grinning like a game show host who'd just revealed the grand prize. "I'm not scared of you, Brandon. You're nothing. A failed Fed who couldn't cut it. My sister deserves better. This town deserves better." Brandon's response was simple. "For hours." "What happens in 4 hours?" "You'll see." He pocketed his phone and moved back to his car. There was work to do before the team arrived. Intelligence to gather, approaches to scout, contingencies to plan. But first, he needed to make one more call. Gerard Kellogg answered on the first ring. "Boss," Russell briefed me. "I'm running flight plans now, but I need to know, how dirty are we willing to get on this?" "Define dirty." "These corrupt cops on Newell's payroll. If they show up during the op, we engaging." Brandon thought about the photo of Missy, about the casual cruelty in Clint's eyes, about 3 years of watching his marriage crumble because he tried to do the right thing and walk away from violence. Sometimes the right thing was the wrong answer. "Anyone who stands between us and my daughter is a hostile," he said quietly. "I don't care what badge they're wearing." "Copy that. We're going to need a cleanup protocol. Already working on it. I've got contacts at the Bureau who owe me favors. Once we extract Missy, we make one call. They'll find enough evidence of Newell's operations to justify anything that happens tonight. That's playing it pretty fast and loose with the law, boss." "Kellogg, they kidnapped my 8-year-old daughter and corrupted the justice system to cover it up. The law already failed. We're just correcting the oversight." A pause. "I'm in. We all are. Whatever it takes." Brandon spent the next 2 hours conducting surveillance and building a tactical picture of the warehouse complex. Clint had been smart enough to hire security, but not smart enough to hire competent security. The guards followed predictable patterns, took synchronized breaks, and spent more time on their phones than watching approaches. At 4:15, his phone rang. "Russell, we're 20 minutes out. Landing zone." Brandon rattled off coordinates for an abandoned lot 2 miles north of the warehouse. "I'll meet you there. We'll brief, and roll immediately. Teams ready. Willard brought enough hardware to start a small war. Good. That's exactly what we're planning. He drove to the landing zone and waited, watching the sky. Right on schedule, a black Bell 407 helicopter appeared over the tree line, flying low and fast. It touched down in a cloud of dust, and 6 men emerged. Russell Birch looked exactly as Brandon remembered. 6 feet of coiled steel with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. Wesley Willard came next, carrying 2 heavy equipment bags and grinning like Christmas morning. Gerard Kellogg, Stephen Ingram, Lorenzo Bradford, and Andrew Saunders rounded out the team. The 6 men who'd stood with him in hell more times than he could count. Hell of a reunion, boss, Russell said, gripping Brandon's hand. Wish it was under better circumstances. Appreciate you coming. Your kid. Our fight. Russell gestured to the others. We're family. That's what family does. Brandon spread a tactical map across the helicopter's hood, marking positions. Here's what we know. Approximately 25 to 30 hostiles inside the primary structure. Most are gang affiliates, armed but undisciplined. 5 to 6 former law enforcement on Newell's payroll, plus Newell himself. Hostage is here, southeast quadrant. Building has 4 entry points, but I'm betting only 2 are actually functional. Andrew Saunders, the team's master sniper, studied the map with the intensity of a surgeon examining an X-ray. Sight lines? Limited. But there's an old water tower here, 300 yards northeast. Perfect overwatch position. I'll take it. What's the engagement sequence? Brandon outlined the plan he'd been formulating for the past 4 hours. Saunders establishes overwatch. Kellogg and Bradford take the north entrance, create a diversion, draw them out. Ingram and Willard hit the west side, seal the exits. Russell and I go directly for the hostage through the south entrance. We move fast, we move quiet, and we don't stop until Missy's clear. And Newell? Wesley Willard asked. He's mine. The team exchanged glances. They knew that tone. They'd heard it before, in places where the rules of engagement had been written in blood rather than policy manuals. Boss, Russell said carefully, we need to talk about exfil. Even with bureau contacts, this is going to create waves. Big ones. I've thought about it. Brandon pulled out his phone, showing them surveillance photos he'd taken. Newell's operation is trafficking, money laundering, and drug distribution hidden behind construction contracts. I've been documenting everything for 3 years. Once we have Missy, we make the call. FBI raids the site, finds enough evidence to lock up everyone connected to the Newell family for the next 2 decades. And the bodies? Occupational hazard of being a criminal. Lorenzo Bradford, the team's demolitions expert, whistled low. You're playing a dangerous game, boss. This goes wrong, we all go to prison. Then we don't let it go wrong. Brandon met each man's eyes in turn. I'm not ordering anyone to do this. You can walk away right now, no hard feelings. But my daughter is in there with a man who thinks power and money make him untouchable. I'm going to prove him wrong. Saunders checked his rifle, a habit born of countless missions. What's the timeline? Brandon checked his watch. We move in 30 minutes. Saunders, you'll be in position in 20. Once you signal green, we execute. Fast and clean. These people think they're wolves. Tonight they learn what it's like to be prey. The team moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and loading equipment. Brandon watched them work, feeling something shift inside him. For 3 years, he tried to be a different person. The husband Samantha wanted. The civilian job candidate. The man who'd walked away from violence. Tonight, he stopped pretending. Tonight, he went back to being exactly what he was trained to be, a weapon pointed at evil. Russell appeared at his elbow. You good, boss? Never better. Liar. I can see it in your eyes. This is personal. It's my daughter, Russ. I know. That's what worries me. Personal makes us sloppy. Brandon turned to face his old friend. You remember Wilmot Elementary? Russell's expression darkened. Every day, I failed those kids because I hesitated, because I followed protocol, because I trusted that the system would work. He gestured toward the warehouse in the distance. That system failed my daughter today. So tonight, we're the system. And we don't hesitate. Russell nodded slowly. No hesitation. We bring her home. Whatever it takes. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, 6 men prepared for war. In the warehouse, Clint Newell sat in his office, surrounded by armed men, confident that money and power made him invincible. He was about to learn a lesson that Brandon had spent 12 years teaching criminals around the world. There's always someone more dangerous than you. And sometimes, they're coming for their daughter. Andrew Saunders settled into position on the water tower, his rifle resting on its bipod. I pressed to the scope. Below, the warehouse complex sprawled like a concrete monument to corruption. He keyed his radio. Overwatch in position. I've got eyes on the entire compound. Copy. Brandon's voice crackled back. Count. Saunders began the systematic assessment that had made him legendary in the hostage rescue community. I've got 17 visible hostiles in the compound yard. 5 more inside through the windows. Make that 22 total. Wait, additional movement north side. Correction, 26 confirmed hostiles. Armed, all of them. Mix of handguns and long rifles. Mostly ARs, some AKs. These guys are geared up like they're expecting trouble. They should be, Brandon replied. Kellogg, Bradford, you're up. Remember, this is a diversion. Make noise, draw them out. Don't take unnecessary risks. Copy that, boss. Moving to position. Saunders watched through his scope as Gerard Kellogg and Lorenzo Bradford approached the north entrance from opposite angles. Both men moved with the fluid economy of motion that came from years of practice. They'd done this dance 100 times in 100 different hellholes around the world. The 2 guards at the north entrance never saw them coming. Bradford went first, emerging from behind a shipping container with his weapon raised. Federal agents. On the ground now. The guard spun, reaching for their weapons, a fatal mistake. Kellogg's suppressed shots took them both down before they could fire. The sound was barely louder than a cough, but the effect was immediate. Saunders watched the compound come alive. Men poured out of the warehouse, weapons drawn, moving toward the north entrance with all the tactical sophistication of an angry mob. Diversion effective, Saunders reported. 20-plus hostiles converging on Kellogg and Bradford's position. South entrance is clear. Boss, you've got your window. Moving now. Through his scope, Saunders tracked Brandon and Russell as they sprinted toward the south entrance. Both men moved with lethal purpose, weapons at the ready. They reached the door, and Russell produced a breaching charge. Charges set, Russell whispered over comms. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The explosion was muffled but effective, blowing the door off its hinges. Brandon and Russell disappeared into the warehouse as gunfire erupted at the north entrance. Kellogg and Bradford keeping the hostiles occupied. Ingram, Willard, Brandon's voice came through. Seal the west exits. Nobody leaves this building. On it, Stephen Ingram replied. Saunders shifted his scope to the west side, watching as Ingram and Willard took position. 2 men tried to escape through a side door, only to walk into a wall of suppressed gunfire. They dropped without a sound. West side secure, Willard reported. No one's getting out this way. Inside the warehouse, Brandon moved through the darkness with Russell at his back. The layout matched the blueprints he'd studied, a maze of corridors and storage rooms that led to what had once been the main office space. That's where the tracker showed Missy. Contact front, Russell whispered. 2 guards appeared around a corner. Brandon's shots were precise, professional. Both men dropped. He and Russell stepped over the bodies and kept moving. A door ahead, marked office. Brandon checked the tracker one more time. Missy was on the other side. He tested the handle. Locked. Of course. Russell pulled out a small shape charge. 30 seconds. They waited in silence, counting down. At 0, the charge detonated, and the door disintegrated. Brandon went through first, weapon raised, scanning for threats. The room was empty except for the metal chair in the center. Missy's purple jacket lay draped across it like a taunt. It's a trap, Russell said. The lights came on, blinding after the darkness. Speakers crackled to life, and Clint Newell's voice filled the room, smug and self-satisfied. Welcome, brother-in-law. I was wondering when you'd show up. Did you really think I'd make it that easy? The tracker in her backpack, Brilliant, by the way. Very thorough. But I found it 3 hours ago. Missy's somewhere else entirely. Brandon's jaw clenched, but his voice remained calm. Where is she? Safe. Scared, but safe. See, I figured you'd try something stupid like this. Call in your old Fed buddies, play commando, rescue the princess. Very predictable. A pause. But here's the thing. While you've been storming my warehouse, my people have been busy. They've got Samantha now, too. Mother and daughter, together. Isn't that sweet? Russell keyed his radio. Saunders, you got eyes on additional vehicles leaving the compound? Negative, Saunders replied. Nothing's moved since we arrived. Brandon studied the room with new eyes. The chair, the jacket, the speakers, all positioned perfectly for maximum psychological impact. But Clint had made a mistake. He'd revealed too much. You're bluffing, Brandon said to the empty room. You don't have Samantha. And you're still here, somewhere in this building, because your ego won't let you run. Clint's laugh was forced artificial. Am I? You want to take that risk? Russell, Brandon said quietly, I need you to do something for me. Name it. Take the team and complete the sweep. Every room, every corridor. Find every hostile in this building and eliminate them. Then find Clint Newell. What are you going to do? Brandon pulled out his phone and dialed Samantha. She answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. Brandon, where are you? I've been calling. Are you safe? I'm at my parents' house. What's happening? The news is reporting explosions. Brandon felt relief and rage in equal measure. Stay there. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me. He hung up and addressed the room again. You lied about Samantha, which means you're lying about Missy too. She's still here. The speakers crackled, and for the first time, uncertainty crept into Clint's voice. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I know you, Clint. You're not smart enough for a complicated plan. You're a trust fund bully who stumbled into playing crime lord. And bullies always keep their victims close so they can watch them suffer. You think you know me? Clint's voice rose, anger replacing smugness. You don't know anything. You're a washed-up Fed who couldn't even. Brandon pulled the battery out of his phone, then crushed the GPS tracker under his boot. Russell, he's been tracking us through the signals. Go dark. Radio silence until we find her. The team acknowledged their communications going silent. Brandon moved through the warehouse with renewed purpose, his mind processing years of training and experience. Clint had made mistakes, the kind of mistakes amateurs always made when they thought they were being clever. The tracker had been a test, bait to see if Brandon would take it. But Clint's arrogance had made him reveal his hand too early. If Missy had really been moved, Clint would have waited, drawn it out, maximized Brandon's desperation. No, she was here, somewhere in this building. And Clint was watching, because his ego demanded an audience. Brandon stopped in the center of the warehouse floor and looked up. Catwalks crisscrossed the ceiling, providing perfect observation points. And there, in the southeast corner, a small office with blacked-out windows that overlooked the entire facility. He smiled. Found you. The gunfire from the north entrance had stopped. Either Kellogg and Bradford had eliminated all the hostiles, or they'd retreated. Brandon bet on the former. His team didn't retreat. He approached the catwalk stairs, weapon raised, senses heightened. A shadow moved above, someone repositioning. Brandon fired 3 shots, and the shadow fell, hitting the concrete floor with a wet thud. 25 down, 24 to go, if his count was right. The catwalk office door was reinforced steel. Smart, but not smart enough. Brandon pulled a compact, breaching charge from his vest and set it. The explosion tore the door open, and he went through fast and low. The office was empty except for computer monitors showing camera feeds from throughout the compound. Brandon scanned them quickly, cataloging information. 3 screens showed different angles of the main warehouse floor. 2 more showed the exterior perimeter. And 1, there, a small room in the basement. Missy, sitting in a different chair, still wearing her purple jacket. No visible guards, but that didn't mean they weren't there. Brandon heard movement behind him and spun, but it was Russell, emerging from the shadows. Building's clear topside, Russell reported. We counted 28 hostiles total, all eliminated. No casualties on our side. But boss, he gestured to the monitor showing Missy. That's the basement. Only one entrance, and it's got a blast door that'll take serious hardware to breach. Then we get serious hardware. Bradford's already on it. But there's a problem. That blast door has a dead man switch. Clint's down there with her. If we force entry, he could. I know. Brandon studied the monitors, his mind racing through scenarios. Where's Saunders? Still in overwatch position. Tell him to move to the north-facing window, 3rd floor. I saw it on the blueprints. It has a direct sight line to the basement if you're at the right angle through the ventilation shaft. Russell keyed his radio. Saunders, you copy? Copy. Moving to position now. Brandon watched the monitors as his plan took shape. Clint thought he'd been clever, setting up a hostage situation in a reinforced room. But he'd made a fatal assumption, that Brandon would negotiate. Brandon didn't negotiate. Not anymore. Not when it came to his daughter. Bradford, he called over the radio, I need you to prepare charges for the blast door. Not to breach, to make noise. Maximum boom, minimum penetration. Copy that. You want Newell thinking we're coming through the door. Exactly. Saunders, what's your status? The sniper's voice came through calm and measured. In position. I've got eyes through the ventilation shaft. It's a narrow angle, but I can see approximately 60% of the room. Hostage is visible. Subject is, wait, I've got Newell. He's pacing, armed with what looks like a Glock 19. He's agitated, checking his phone. Can you take the shot? A pause. Not with the hostage in the room. Too much risk. If he moves 3 feet to his left, I'll have a clean angle. Brandon thought fast. Bradford, when's that charge ready? 2 minutes. Make it loud. I want Newell thinking we're about to breach. Russell, gather the team at the blast door. Full tactical presence. Make it look like we're preparing to storm the room. His old friend nodded. You're running a deception. Get him to move for the shot. Something like that. The team assembled at the basement entrance, Bradford carefully placing charges that would create maximum noise and flash without actually compromising the door. Brandon took position behind them, watching the monitor that showed the basement room. Clint was pacing now, his weapon held loosely, confidence beginning to crack. He kept glancing at the door, at Missy, at his phone, looking for options that didn't exist. Boss, Saunders' voice crackled, I need him to move left. Just a few feet. I'll have maybe a 2-second window. Brandon picked up a phone on the wall, an old internal system that connected to the basement office. It rang 3 times before Clint answered. I wondered if you'd call, Clint said. Ready to discuss terms? I have terms, Brandon replied. You walk out of that room with your hands up. Missy walks out unharmed. You face justice in a court of law. Justice? Clint laughed. Brandon, there is no justice. There's only power. And I have all of it. Past tense. Your 26 guards are dead. Your fortress is compromised. You're alone in a room with no exits, and outside that door are 6 men who've spent decades hunting people like you. But I have your daughter, and that's the only thing keeping you alive right now. But Clint, here's what you haven't figured out yet. I'm not the FBI anymore. I'm not bound by their rules. I'm not worried about warrants or constitutional rights or due process. I'm a father whose daughter was kidnapped, and the law has already failed me today. Silence on the other end. You have one chance, Brandon continued. Put the gun down. Let Missy go. Face whatever consequences come next like a man instead of a coward. Or what? You'll storm the room? I've got my finger on a dead man's switch, Brandon. You breach that door, I drop Missy, and this whole room goes up. I've got enough C4 wired in here, too. You're bluffing again, Brandon cut him off. If you really had explosives, you'd have shown them on camera. You'd have made sure I could see the threat. But there's nothing in that room except you, my daughter, and your rapidly shrinking options. You don't know that. Bradford, Brandon called out loudly, making sure Clint could hear, prepare to breach. Shaped charges, overlapping pattern. We go in 30 seconds. Through the monitor, Brandon watched Clint's face go pale. The man looked around wildly, weapon trembling in his hand. He was breaking. Good. Wait, damn it, I'll. 20 seconds. I'll kill her. I swear to God, I'll. 15 seconds. Saunders, you in position? Affirmative, the sniper responded. Still need him to move. Clint backed toward the corner, trying to put Missy between himself and the door. Exactly the wrong move. He was panicking now, all pretense of control evaporating. 10 seconds. Bradford ready? Russell called out, his voice echoing down the corridor. Charges set. Fire in the hole on your mark. Clint spun, looking for options for escape routes for anything. He took 3 steps to his left, weapon raised toward the door. Now, Brandon said quietly. The suppressed crack of Saunders' rifle was barely audible, but the effect was immediate. Clint jerked backward, the gun falling from his hand. He looked down at the red bloom spreading across his chest, confusion replacing fear in his eyes. Saunders, confirm, Brandon snapped. Target down. Hostage is clear. Room is secure. Brandon was already moving, Russell at his side. They reached the blast door, and Brandon punched in the override code he'd extracted from the security system upstairs. The door hissed open. Inside, Missy sat her chair, eyes wide but dry. Clint Newell lay on the floor, still breathing but fading fast. His eyes found Brandon's. You shot me. No, Brandon said, kneeling beside his daughter and cutting her restraints. My sniper shot you. I just gave the order. He gathered Missy into his arms, and only then did she start to cry. Daddy, I was so scared. I know, sweetheart. I know, but you're safe now. I've got you. Clint coughed, blood flecking his lips. You can't, the law. Brandon looked down at the dying man with no pity. You were right about one thing. Your family does own this town, but they don't own the FBI. And in about 5 minutes, 20 federal agents are going to raid this facility. They're going to find detailed evidence of drug trafficking, money laundering, and kidnapping. They're going to find 26 armed criminals who died in a shootout when they resisted arrest. And they're going to find you, Clint Newell, a terrorist who took my daughter hostage and was killed in a lawful tactical operation. That's exactly what happened. Because I called in every favor I had left at the Bureau. Because unlike you, I actually earned respect and loyalty instead of just buying it. Clint's eyes went distant, the light fading. His last words were barely a whisper. You just like me. No, Brandon said softly. I'm nothing like you. You hurt people because you could. I hurt people because I had to. Learn the difference. Clint Newell died at 7:47 p.m., alone on a concrete floor, surrounded by the ruins of his empire. Brandon carried Missy out of the basement, past the bodies of men who'd chosen the wrong side, past the evidence of Clint's criminal enterprise that would bury the Newell family legacy forever. Outside, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. Russell appeared beside him. FBI's 3 minutes out. We good. We're good. Transfer all evidence files to their custody. Highlight the trafficking and kidnapping charges. Make sure they understand this was a federal rescue operation. And us. Ghost protocol. We were never here. By the time the FBI lands, we're gone. The team moved with practiced efficiency, erasing their presence while leaving enough evidence to ensure the FBI would find exactly what they needed. Wesley Willard wiped down weapons. Gerard Kellogg corrupted security footage. Lorenzo Bradford removed breaching charges and replaced them with evidence of Clint's own explosives. Within minutes, the scene told a different story. A story of federal agents responding to a kidnapping, of criminals who chose violence, of a justified tactical resolution. The story Brandon needed it to tell. He loaded Missy into the helicopter, wrapping her in Russell's jacket. She looked up at him with those knowing eyes. Uncle Clint's dead, isn't he? Brandon had never lied to his daughter. He wasn't about to start. Yes. Good, she said, and the coldness in her voice broke his heart. He told me he was going to hurt you. He said terrible things about you. What kind of things? That you were weak. That you ran away from being a hero because you were scared. That mom was going to leave you. Missy's small hand gripped his. But you're not weak, Daddy. You came for me. You saved me. Brandon held his daughter as the helicopter lifted off, watching the warehouse complex grow smaller below. In the distance, FBI helicopters approached, carrying agents who would find exactly what he wanted them to find. I'll always come for you, he whispered. Always. The flight back was silent except for the rotor's steady thrum. Brandon's team sat in professional stillness, each man processing the operation in his own way. They'd all done questionable things in the name of saving lives. Tonight was just another entry in a long ledger. Russell leaned close. You know this isn't over. The Newell family still has power. Resources. They'll come after you. Let them try. Boss. Russ, they kidnapped my daughter. They corrupted the justice system. They turned a blind eye while one of their own built a criminal empire. And they thought their money made them untouchable. Brandon's voice was cold, final. Tonight, I showed them what happens when you touch what's mine. If they want round two, I'm ready. The helicopter set down in a private airfield 40 miles from town. Brandon's personal car was waiting, parked exactly where he'd left it that morning, though the morning felt like a lifetime ago. What's next for you? Gerard Kellogg asked. I'm going to take my daughter home. Then I'm going to have a very long conversation with my wife about her family. And us. Stephen Ingram gestured to the team. Brandon shook hands with each man. You saved my daughter's life. That's a debt I can never repay. But if you ever need me, for anything, you make the call. Same goes for you, boss, Russell said. We're family. Don't forget that. Brandon drove Missy home through darkened streets, the town quiet and unaware of the war that had just been fought in its shadows. His phone buzzed constantly. Messages from Samantha, from news alerts, from FBI contacts confirming the successful operation. He ignored them all. At home, Samantha burst out the front door before he'd even parked. She ripped open the back door and pulled Missy into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Oh God, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom, Missy said, her voice small but steady. Dad saved me. Samantha's eyes found Brandon's over their daughter's shoulder. In that look was everything: gratitude, guilt, horror, understanding. The unspoken acknowledgement that their marriage had just crossed a line from which there was no return. Inside the house, Brandon tucked Missy into bed while Samantha hovered in the doorway. His daughter looked up at him with exhausted eyes. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Of course. And Daddy? Will you teach me those things you know? The things that let you find me? Brandon smoothed her hair, considering. When you're older, if you still want to learn, I will. Because when I grow up, I want to be like you. Someone who helps people. Someone who doesn't give up. She was asleep within minutes, her breathing deep and even. Brandon sat watching her, memorizing every detail of her face. His daughter. Safe. Home. Downstairs, Samantha waited at the kitchen table, a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses in front of her. She poured without asking, sliding one across to him. The news says there was a shootout at Clint's warehouse. 26 dead, including my brother. The FBI is calling it a major operation against organized crime. That's what it was. Brandon, what did you do? He took a sip of whiskey, feeling the burn. What needed to be done? You killed my brother. No. I rescued our daughter from the man who kidnapped her. What happened to Clint was his own choice. Samantha's hand shook as she raised her glass. My parents are under investigation. The FBI found evidence linking them to Clint's operations. Money laundering, bribery, corruption. They're saying Dad might go to prison. He might. How long have you known about their involvement? 3 years. Since Clint started expanding his operations and your father's construction company started winning every city contract. The math wasn't hard. Her laugh was bitter, broken. And you never said anything. Would you have believed me? 3 years ago, when you still thought your family was respectable. She had no answer to that. I need to know something, Brandon said quietly. That legal guardianship Clint mentioned. Did you really sign papers? Samantha's face crumpled. They asked me to. Said it was just a formality for school emergencies. I didn't read them carefully enough. I didn't realize. She looked up, tears streaming. I gave him permission to take her. Oh God, Brandon, I gave him permission. He wanted to hate her, wanted to rage and scream and blame. But looking at his wife's broken face, he felt only exhaustion. You didn't know what he'd do with it. But I should have questioned it. Instead, I just signed because my family asked me to, because I always do what they want. She stopped, something shifting in her expression. I'm just like them, aren't I? Weak. Complicit. Using money and influence to avoid responsibility. No, Brandon said, surprising himself. You're nothing like them. Because you're sitting here facing what you did instead of making excuses. Because you're asking the hard questions instead of buying your way out. That's the difference. They sat in silence, the weight of the day settling over them like a shroud. What happens now? Samantha finally asked. Now, the FBI builds their case. Your family's empire crumbles. Clint's criminal network gets dismantled. Justice, more or less, gets served. And us. Brandon looked at the woman he'd married 12 years ago, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. She wasn't the villain in this story, just someone who'd been born into the wrong family and taken too long to see it. That's up to you, he said. I can't be married to someone who chooses her family's legacy over our daughter's safety. But if you're willing to walk away from all that, from the money, the influence, the Newell name, then maybe we can find our way back to each other. They're my parents, Brandon. They're accomplices to the man who kidnapped our child. Samantha closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had hardened there. A decision made. I'll testify against them if the FBI needs it. Everything I know about their business dealings, their connections, their operations. All of it. That'll destroy you in this town. This town is built on corruption and lies. Maybe it needs to be destroyed. She reached across the table, taking his hand. I choose you. I choose Missy. I choose the truth, whatever it costs. Brandon squeezed her hand, feeling something shift between them. Not quite forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. Upstairs, Missy slept peacefully, safe in her own bed. Outside, the town of Bradford Heights continued its oblivious existence, unaware that its foundation of corruption had just cracked wide open. And in the morning, when the news broke about the Newell family's fall from grace, Brandon Miranda would face whatever came next. But tonight, he was just a father who'd brought his daughter home. And that was enough. The morning sun hit differently after the darkness. Brandon stood at his kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching news vans circle the Newell estate like vultures. The story had broken at 6 a.m. Prominent family empire crumbles in FBI corruption probe. The talking heads were having a field day. His phone rang. A number he recognized from his bureau days. Miranda? It's Special Agent Chun. We need to talk. Brandon met Antonio Chun at a diner on the edge of town, far from the media circus. Chun had been his point of contact at the FBI, the man he'd fed information about the Newell family operations for 3 years. The man who'd mobilized the raid that gave Brandon's operation legal cover. Hell of a mess you made, Chun said, sliding into the booth. I got my daughter back. You got 26 people killed. 26 criminals who kidnapped a child. Let's not pretend they were choir boys. Chun sighed, pushing a folder across the table. The forensics team went through that warehouse. You know what they found? Enough evidence to charge 17 city officials with corruption. A trafficking operation spanning 3 states. Financial records linking the Newell family to organized crime for the past decade. You handed us the case of the century on a silver platter. You're welcome. Don't be cute. I need to know how many federal laws did you break getting that evidence? Brandon took a sip of coffee. I'm not sure what you mean. I was a civilian acting in defense of my kidnapped child. Everything that happened was a result of criminals choosing violence over surrender, right? And the 6 men who showed up in a helicopter that isn't registered to anyone, the military-grade weapons, the precision tactical operation that looks suspiciously like an HRT raid, concerned citizens, maybe some private security contractors who owed me favors. Chun stared at him for a long moment, then closed the folder. Officially, this conversation never happened. Officially, you got lucky and found your daughter before she could be moved. The criminals panicked, shots were fired, and the situation resolved itself before federal agents arrived. That sounds accurate. Brandon, I'm going to be straight with you. What you did, it's going to have consequences. Maybe not legal ones. We're going to make sure this whole thing stays clean. But you've made enemies. The Newell family might be going down, but they've got friends, allies, people who won't forget that you destroyed one of the most powerful families in the state. I'm counting on it. Chun leaned forward. What? Because scared enemies make mistakes. And when they do, you'll be there to catch them. Brandon met his eyes. You wanted the corruption in this town exposed. I gave you the opening. What you do with it is up to you. There's something else. Chun pulled out a second folder. We found this in Clint Newell's office. A dossier. On you. Brandon flipped through it, his expression darkening. Photos of Missy at school. Samantha's daily schedule. Floor plans of his house. GPS tracking data of his movements over the past 6 months. He'd been planning this for a while, Chun said. This wasn't just about getting you out of the picture. He wanted to break you, destroy you psychologically before he killed you. He failed, did he? Chun gestured to the dossier. Look at the last page. Brandon turned to it and felt ice flood his veins. A contract. $10,000 to a local thug named Marcus Drake. The job description. Make it look like an accident. Wife and daughter. Complete within 30 days. The date was 2 weeks from now. Clint was planning to kill them anyway, Brandon said quietly. Even if I'd walked away. Even if I'd left town. He was going to murder my family and make me watch. That's what we think. The good news is Drake's already in custody. We picked him up this morning, and he's singing like a canary. Names, dates, connections. The Newell family's entire enforcement network is about to collapse. Brandon closed the folder, his hands steady despite the rage burning inside. Thank you for showing me this. I showed you because you deserve to know what kind of monster you put down. Not everyone would have had the guts to do what you did. Chun stood, dropping money on the table for the coffee. Stay out of trouble, Miranda. You got a daughter who needs her father. After Chun left, Brandon sat alone in the diner booth, staring at the dossier. Clint Newell had been planning to kill Missy and Samantha. No matter what Brandon did, no matter how he responded, his family had been doomed the moment Clint decided there were obstacles. He pulled out his phone and called Russell. Boss, you good? I need you to check something for me. Marcus Drake, local enforcement for the Newell family. FBI picked him up this morning. I'll run him through our contacts. What am I looking for? Connections. Associates. Anyone who might try to complete his contract now that he's in custody. A pause. There's still a threat? There's always a threat. Until we dismantle every piece of their network, my family isn't safe. Then we dismantle it. I'll make some calls. Brandon hung up and stared out the diner window. In the distance, he could see the Newell estate, now surrounded by FBI vehicles. The empire was falling, just as he'd planned. But empires didn't die quietly. They thrashed and fought and tried to take everyone down with them. He needed to be ready. At home, Samantha was making breakfast while Missy sat at the table, drawing pictures of unicorns. Normal. Domestic. A scene from a life Brandon had thought he'd lost. Hey, sweetheart, he said, kissing the top of Missy's head. How are you feeling? Okay, I guess. Jenny from school called. She wanted to know if the news stories were true. If Uncle Clint really was a bad guy. What did you tell her? That sometimes people do bad things, and we don't know until it's too late. Missy looked up at him with those knowing eyes. That's what you taught me, right? That's right. Samantha set a plate of eggs in front of him. The FBI called. They wanted to come in for a formal interview this afternoon. About my parents' business dealings. You ready for that? No, but I'll do it anyway. She sat down, her own plate untouched. My mother called this morning. She's hired lawyers. Expensive ones. She wanted me to know that if I testify against them, I'll be cut out of the family entirely. No inheritance, no support, no contact. And I told her that was fine, because we're not family anymore. Family doesn't kidnap children. Missy looked up. Does that mean Grandma and Grandpa are bad too? It was Samantha who answered. It means they made bad choices, honey, and now they have to face the consequences. Brandon's phone buzzed. A text from Russell. Found 3 associates of Drake still active. Addresses attached. Recommend immediate action. He glanced at Samantha, who was watching him with understanding in her eyes. You have to go, she said quietly. I have to finish this. I know. She reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Be careful. Brandon changed into tactical gear in the garage, the familiar ritual centering him. Vest. Weapon. Spare magazines. This wasn't an FBI operation anymore. This was personal protection, preventive maintenance. Russell picked him up in an unmarked SUV, Wesley Willard in the back seat. 3 targets, Russell said, pulling into traffic. First one's easy. Marcus Drake's cousin, Jimmy Drake. Small-time enforcer, 2 priors for assault. Lives in a trailer park on the south side. He know we're coming? Doubt it. News about his cousin's arrest only broke an hour ago. They found Jimmy Drake exactly where Russell's intel suggested. Passed out drunk in his trailer. A .38 special on the coffee table next to empty beer cans. Brandon secured him with zip ties while Willard searched the trailer. Boss, you need to see this. In the bedroom, Willard had found a go bag. Cash, fake IDs, and a folder containing surveillance photos of Missy's school. Jimmy Drake woke up to Brandon's face inches from his own. Morning, Jimmy. We need to talk about Marcus. I don't know nothing. Brandon held up one of the photos. These say different. You and your cousin are planning something. I want to know what. Man, I'm just a lookout. Marcus was supposed to... Jimmy stopped, realizing he'd said too much. Marcus was supposed to what? Jimmy's eyes darted to the door, calculating escape routes that didn't exist. Finally, he slumped. He was supposed to grab a girl, take her somewhere quiet, wait for instructions. Instructions from who? I don't know, man. Some lady. Marcus never told me her name. Brandon exchanged a glance with Russell. A woman. That changed things. This lady. What did she look like? I never saw her. Marcus just said she was connected. Real connected. That doing this job would set us up for life. Brandon pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos until he found one of the Newell family at a charity gala. Any of these people? Jimmy squinted at the screen, then pointed to a woman standing beside Marcus Newell. Her, the one in the blue dress. Marlene Wong, Marcus Newell's second wife. Clint's stepmother. Brandon felt pieces clicking into place. Clint hadn't been working alone. His stepmother had been pulling strings behind the scenes, using Clint's criminal network for her own purposes. Russell, we need to move on the other 2 targets fast. If Marlene Wong knows Drake's been arrested. His phone rang. Antonio Chun. Brandon, we've got a situation. Marlene Wong just left the country on a private jet. We're trying to track her, but she's got resources. She was the architect, Brandon said. Clint was just the hammer. How do you know that? Because I'm looking at surveillance photos she commissioned. She was planning to take Missy even before Clint made his move. This whole thing was her operation. Chun swore creatively. We need to bring her in. You got any idea where she'd run? Give me an hour. Brandon turned to Jimmy Drake. Your cousin. Where did he meet with Marlene Wong? Some office building downtown. The old Blackwell Tower. Top floor. Russell was already moving. I know that building. It's been condemned for 2 years. Perfect place for off-books meetings. They left Jimmy Drake zip-tied in his trailer. He'd be found eventually, along with enough evidence to send him to prison. Brandon had bigger problems now. Blackwell Tower loomed against the morning sky, its windows dark and empty. The building had been a symbol of Bradford Heights prosperity once. Now, it was just another monument to corruption, bought and abandoned by the Newell family when it stopped being profitable. How do you want to play this? Willard asked as they surveilled the building from across the street. Fast and quiet. Marlene might have left the country, but if she was using this as a base of operations, there'll be evidence. Documents, computers, something we can use to track her. The building's security was a joke. Rusted locks and disabled alarms. They made entry through a ground floor window and ascended the emergency stairwell, weapons drawn. The top floor had been converted into a makeshift office. File cabinets lined the walls, and a bank of computers sat on a long table, still powered on. She left in a hurry, Russell observed. Didn't even wipe the drives. Brandon moved to the computers while Willard and Russell secured the floor. The files were a goldmine: financial records, communication logs, photographs. Marlene Wong hadn't just been planning to kidnap Missy. She'd been planning to take over the entire Newell criminal empire, using Clint as a patsy. One file made Brandon's blood run cold. It was titled Contingency Miranda Elimination. Inside were detailed plans for killing not just Samantha and Missy, but Brandon himself. Multiple scenarios, multiple contractors, multiple timelines. Marlene Wong had been planning their death for months. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You kill my stepson. Now I'll kill everything you love. Run while you can. Brandon showed it to Russell, who grimaced. She's trying to spook you. It's working. Another text. Your daughter looks so sweet in her purple jacket. Such a shame. Brandon's jaw clenched. Marlene was watching them. Right now, she had cameras or spotters, or he looked up at the computers, understanding dawning. She's watching through the security feeds. This whole floor is wired. Russell immediately began searching for cameras. He found 3, all streaming to an external server. Brandon stepped in front of one, staring directly into the lens. Marlene, if you're watching this, listen carefully. You can run. You can hide. You can use every resource at your disposal. But I will find you. And when I do, you'll wish you'd faced justice the legal way. His phone buzzed again. Big words from a man whose wife is home alone with his daughter right now. Brandon was moving before the text finished loading, Russell and Willard right behind him. They took the stairs at a dead run, burst through the exit, and sprinted for the SUV. Call Samantha, Russell shouted, tires squealing as he pulled onto the street. Brandon dialed. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. Faster, he said, his voice deadly calm. They made the drive in 12 minutes, running red lights and pushing the SUV past any reasonable speed. Brandon was out before they'd fully stopped, weapon drawn, moving toward his front door. It was ajar. He went in fast and low, clearing angles, his heart hammering. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Upstairs, Brandon, Samantha's voice from Missy's room. He took the stairs 3 at a time and found them barricaded in the bedroom. Samantha holding a baseball bat, Missy behind her. Both were terrified but unharmed. Someone tried to break in, Samantha said, her voice shaking. I heard them on the back porch. We locked ourselves in here, and I called 911, but the police didn't come, Brandon finished. Of course they hadn't. Marlene Wong still had enough influence to delay response times. Russell appeared in the doorway. Perimeter's clear. Whoever it was, they're gone. But boss, we found something. On the back porch, a mannequin dressed in a purple jacket identical to Missy's. Pinned to it, a note. Next time it won't be fake. Brandon photographed everything, then called Antonio Chun. She's escalating, Chun said after Brandon filled him in. We got people at the airport, the borders, every exit point. But Marlene Wong has resources we're still uncovering. She could be anywhere. Then I go to her. Brandon, she made this personal. She threatened my family in my home. I'm not waiting for the FBI to find her through official channels. What are you planning? To remind her that predators aren't the only ones who can hunt. Brandon spent the next 6 hours turning his home into a fortress. Russell brought in additional security equipment. Gerard Kellogg installed sensors and cameras. Stephen Ingram set up a command center in the garage to monitor all feeds. Samantha watched from the kitchen doorway. How long will we have to live like this? Until Marlene Wong is in custody or dead. And if she runs forever, she won't. She's angry, humiliated. People like her don't run, they strike back. And when she does, we'll be ready. Missy emerged from her room, carrying her favorite stuffed unicorn. Daddy, I'm scared. Brandon knelt, pulling her into a hug. I know, sweetheart, but you're safe. I promise. Will the bad lady come back? Not while I'm here. Lorenzo Bradford called from the garage. Boss, we've got movement. Camera 3 picked up a vehicle circling the block. 3rd time in 10 minutes. Brandon moved to the monitors. A black sedan, windows tinted, no plates. Amateur surveillance. Marlene was testing their defenses. Let them watch, he said. Tomorrow, we take the fight to her. That night, Brandon didn't sleep. He sat in Missy's room, watching her breathe, his weapon within reach. Russell and the team rotated guard shifts, maintaining vigilance. At 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. A call for an encrypted number. Hello, Brandon. Marlene Wong's voice was smooth, cultured. I thought we should talk. I'm listening. You cost me everything. My husband's fortune, my stepson, my future. All because you couldn't accept your place in the natural order. My place. Beneath us. That's where people like you belong. subservient to those with real power. But you had a play hero. Her voice turned venomous. So now I'll take everything from you. Your daughter first, then your wife, then you, slowly, painfully, while you beg for death. You finished. Excuse me. Your villain monologue. You finished? Because I got a few things to say. Brandon's voice was ice. You're not as smart as you think. Not as connected. Not as powerful. You're a con artist who married into money and thought that made you untouchable. But here's what you don't understand. I've spent 12 years hunting people far more dangerous than you. Terrorists with actual armies. Cartels with international reach. Compared to them, you're just another rich sociopath with delusions of grandeur. Silence on the line. Come for my family again, Brandon continued, and I won't call the FBI. I won't call the police. I'll handle it myself. And Marlene, you won't get a trial. You won't get a lawyer. You'll just disappear. Do you understand? The line went dead. Russell appeared beside him. That was either very brave or very stupid. Little of both. Brandon stood, stretching. But it worked. She'll come now. Probably within 48 hours. She can't resist the challenge. How do you know? Because I know predators. And I just told her she's not one. That kind of insult demanded a response. The team spent the next day preparing. Andrew Saunders took position on a rooftop 3 blocks away, his rifle covering all approaches to the house. Wesley Willard wired the perimeter with sensors. Gerard Kellogg hacked into the city's traffic camera network, giving them visibility for a 2-mile radius. Brandon moved Samantha and Missy to a safe house, Russell's sister's place, 40 miles away, off the grid. They protested, but he was firm. This ends tomorrow, he told Samantha. One way or another. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise I'll come back. That night, the trap was set. Brandon's house appeared normal from the outside, but inside, 6 highly trained operators waited in strategic positions. Every angle covered. Every contingency planned. At 2:17 a.m., Gerard Kellogg's voice came through the comms. We've got 4 vehicles approaching from different directions. Black sedans, professional formation. This is it. Copy that, Brandon replied. Remember the rules of engagement. We want Marlene Wong alive if possible. Everyone else is expendable. The vehicles converged on his house, disgorging 12 armed men. They moved with military precision, not amateurs. Marlene had hired professional mercenaries. Boss, Russell whispered, we're outnumbered 2-1. We've faced worse. Let them come to us. The mercenaries approached the house in textbook formation, 4-man teams covering each other's movements. They reached the front door, prepared to breach, and walked into Lorenzo Bradford's Claymore mines. The explosion was devastating. 4 men down before they'd even entered the building. The others scattered, seeking cover, but they'd already committed to the attack. Andrew Saunders began picking them off from his overwatch position. Precise shots, center mass, no hesitation. 3 more down in as many seconds. The remaining 5 returned fire, their shots shattering windows. But they were shooting at shadows. Brandon and his team had already relocated, using the house's interior as a tactical maze. Contact left, Wesley Willard called, engaging 2 mercenaries who'd entered through the kitchen. His shots were controlled, professional. Both targets down. Brandon moved through his own home like a ghost, using every advantage of terrain and preparation. A mercenary appeared around a corner, weapon raised. Brandon was faster. The man dropped. 2 left, and somewhere outside, Marlene Wong was watching her plan unravel. She's on the move, Gerard Kellogg reported. Silver Mercedes, heading south on Maple. Single occupant. She's running, Russell said. No, Brandon corrected. She's repositioning. Saunders, can you track that Mercedes? Affirmative. She's heading toward, boss. She's going toward the safe house. Toward your family. Brandon felt ice flood his veins. How did she know? Doesn't matter. She's 15 minutes out. We need to move now. The team abandoned the house, leaving the surviving mercenaries for the FBI to collect. They piled into 2 vehicles, racing through empty streets toward Russell's sister's place. Brandon dialed Samantha, praying she'd answer. Brandon? What's happening? We heard explosions. Marlene knows where you are. Get Missy and hide. Right now. Where should we? Anywhere. Basement, crawl space, anywhere she won't look. And Samantha? If she finds you, don't negotiate. Don't talk. Just survive until I get there. The drive took 11 minutes. Too long. Every second felt like an eternity. They arrived to find a silver Mercedes parked in the driveway, driver's door open. Marlene Wong had gone inside. Brandon went in first, weapon raised, moving with desperate urgency. The house was dark, silent. He cleared the ground floor, empty. Headed upstairs. A shot rang out from the basement. He took the stairs at a dead run, Russell right behind him. The basement was finished, converted into a recreation room with a kitchenette and bathroom. And in the corner, behind an overturned couch, Samantha stood with a pistol in shaking hands. Marlene Wong lay on the floor, blood spreading from a chest wound. She came down here, Samantha said, her voice distant, shocked. She had a gun. She was going to shoot Missy. I found this in Russell's sister's desk drawer. I just reacted. Brandon knelt beside Marlene. She was still breathing, but barely. Her eyes found his, filled with fury and disbelief. You weren't supposed to win. She gasped. People like you never understand, Brandon said quietly. You thought money and power made you dangerous. But you were never the predator in this story. You were just another obstacle to remove. Your lawyers can't help you now. Neither can your money. Neither can your connections. You tried to kill my daughter. And now you're dying on a basement floor, shot by a woman you underestimated. That's your legacy. Marlene Wong died at 3:47 a.m. Her last expression, one of confused rage. Brandon stood, turning to Samantha. Where's Missy? Bathroom. I locked her in there before. She gestured helplessly at the body. They found Missy curled up in a bathtub, eyes squeezed shut, hands over her ears. Brandon lifted her gently, carrying her upstairs while Russell called it in to Antonio Chun. Outside, dawn was breaking. The nightmare was over. 3 weeks later, Brandon sat in an FBI debriefing room while Antonio Chun closed the file on the Newell family investigation. It's over, Chun said. Marcus and Eleanor Newell are going to prison for money laundering and corruption. Clint's entire criminal network has been dismantled. Marlene Wong's death has been ruled self-defense. You're clear on all counts. And my family? Safe. Every contract on them has been canceled. Every threat neutralized. You can go home, Brandon. You can actually go home. Brandon stood, shaking Chen's hand. Thank you. For everything. I should be thanking you. You handed us the case of the century. The Bradford Heights corruption investigation is going to reshape this entire state. Chen paused. What's next for you? Honestly, I have no idea. You could come back. The Bureau could use someone with your skills. Brandon thought about Missy's face in the helicopter, about Samantha's transformation from complicit bystander to active protector, about the line he'd crossed and couldn't uncross. I don't think I'm Bureau material anymore. Then what are you? A father. A husband. For now, that's enough. At home, Samantha had dinner waiting. She'd enrolled in therapy, started divorce proceedings against her own parents, and begun the long process of rebuilding her identity outside the Newell name. It wasn't easy, but she was trying. Missy was doing better too. She'd started seeing a child psychologist, someone who specialized in trauma. The nightmares were less frequent now. The fear was fading, replaced by something Brandon recognized in his own mirror, strength earned through survival. Dad, she said over dinner, Mrs. Chun says I should write about what happened. For therapy. She says it helps to put it into words. Are you going to? Maybe. But I want to write about the good parts too. About how you came for me. About how Mom protected me. About how we survived. That sounds like a good story. It is. It's got heroes and villains and everything. She smiled. That knowing smile that made her seem older than 8. And the heroes win in the end. After Missy went to bed, Brandon and Samantha sat on the back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. I got an email today, Samantha said, from a publisher. They want me to write a book about growing up in the Newell family, about the corruption and the lies and how I broke free. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Part of me wants to expose everything, make sure the truth is told. But another part, She trailed off. Wants to forget it ever happened. Yes. Brandon took her hand. Whatever you decide, I support you. Even if I choose to tell our story, to write about what you did. He considered that. 3 weeks ago, the answer would have been no. But now, with perspective, with Missy safe and the threat eliminated, he saw things differently. The truth isn't always clean or simple, he said. But it's still the truth. If you want to tell our story, tell it. All of it. The good, the bad, the impossible choices. Let people judge for themselves. They'll call you a vigilante. Maybe, but I'll know I saved my daughter. That's what matters. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There was still a town to rebuild, a community to heal, a family to put back together. But tonight they were home. They were safe. They were together. And that was enough. Brandon Miranda had spent 12 years learning how to save people. The Wilmot Elementary incident had taught him the cost of failure. But Missy's kidnapping had taught him something more important. Sometimes the system fails. Sometimes justice comes with a price. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. And sometimes being a hero means being willing to become the monster that monsters fear. He didn't regret his choices. Not the violence, not the deception, not the lines he'd crossed. Because in the end, he'd done what fathers have done since the beginning of time. Protected his child from the darkness. Whatever came next, he'd face it the same way he'd faced Clint Newell's empire. With precision, with purpose, with the absolute certainty that no one would ever threaten his family again. The story of Brandon Miranda and the fall of the Newell family became legend in Bradford Heights. Some call him a hero. Others called him a criminal who got away with murder. But to Missy Miranda, safe in her bed with her stuffed unicorn and her purple jacket, he was simply Dad. The man who always came when she needed him. The man who never gave up. The man who proved that sometimes love is the most dangerous weapon of all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.